Miranda, it's Billy. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, Billy, loud and clear.
Hi, John. How are you?
I'm well. How are you? How's the
Oh,
picnic?
doing well. Oh, it was great. It was nice to meet some folks from Eldora.
Awesome.
Beautiful day.
Appreciate the invite. I'd love to go next time they have one of those.
Yeah, it's worth it. Nice folks. Beautiful town. Beautiful spot for a picnic for sure. Hey, Miranda, or anyone in the boardroom, can you hear me? Can you hear us?
We can hear you, Mayor Billy. Can you hear us in the room?
Yes, we can hear you now. I'll be in a bit, but we can get started if you like.
Awesome. That sounds good to me.
Are you in the room, Macy? Are you back?
Yes, I'm in the room.
Well, welcome back. Well, welcome everyone to the July 18th BOT meeting. Appreciate everyone being here in person or virtually. 7:02, and we're ready to start the meeting. Macy, can you take roll?
Mayor Billy,
I'm here.
Here.
Trustee Corbalon,
Here.
Trustee Mountain,
I'm here.
Trustee Severs,
Here.
Trustee Sterling.
Here.
Thank you. And then I'd like to note for the record that Trustee Kings-Isma will be absent this evening.
Thank you for that, Macy. Appreciate it. And with that, we'll just go right into consent agenda. We have 3 items for consent: approval of warrants, the peak to peak, the 974 North Peak to Peak Highway well and cistern variance, specifically the sewer variance, and the comp plan RFP. If we have any questions, Miranda is here for answers. Any questions from the board on the 3 items up for consent?
No, I think we're good.
Okay, well, I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve the consent agenda for this evening.
Second.
We gotta have a motion and a second. Thanks, Tom. Macy?
Trustee Severs,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Mahol,
Yes.
Mayor Billy,
Yes?
Trustee Sterling,
Yes.
Trustee Corbalon,
Yes.
and Trustee Mountain.
Yes. And you sound much better, Nicole.
Thanks, everyone. And I just want to, I guess from that, we'll move into public comments on non-agenda items. Public comments on non-agenda items. We had 3 already submitted that are in the packet. One from Lindsay Danforth, one from Kathleen Chipai, and one from Bettina Matheson. Combination of LTRs and pump tracks. Is there anyone else in the room? We'll start in the room. Anyone else in the room have any public comments on non-agenda items?
I've got one. It's regarding weeds. With all the rain we've had, the noxious weeds are popping up all over the place. Do we have, a lot of them are on private property, some. Okay, Joe, on public property, but do we have any program in place, Miranda?
Yes, we do actually have a coming up to help us out some mitigation. I'm sorry, I couldn't hear that response. How about now? Can you hear me now? Yeah, better.
Yeah, better.
Okay. So we do have a company that's coming up at the beginning of August to help us out with some of our weed mitigation problems in some of the areas in town. We don't have a budget to do more than about $5,000 worth of mitigation this year.
Yeah, where's that translate to roughly?
I'm actually not sure. This company is gonna concentrate on 4 different areas around town and specifically targeting scentless chamomile and knapweed.
But my favorites.
And then, I mean, I guess I kind of have a question on that. For folks, for those of us on our own property, are we just supposed to gather that and bring it to the sort yard?
Yeah. Got to put them, Billy, in a ace bag, a craft paper bag, and
They're not taking paper bags anymore at the sort yard.
oh, I
Oh,
just brought some over yesterday
Oh, okay, maybe
or
I
on Saturday.
thought they
yeah,
were stopping that program.
They continued.
Okay, very good.
I'm up at
My
bag
apologies.
28.
Very, very good. Great to know. Thanks, Tom.
thanks. Yeah, that's good for all of us to know. Any more public comments from anyone in the room? On non-agenda items? If not, let's go ahead and move to folks online. If you have a public comment on a non-agenda item, please either raise your hand or go ahead and begin. I don't see any hands raised. So hearing none. With that, we'll go right into staff reports, followed by BOT reports. Miranda?
So staff reports and BOT reports made it into the packet. So first and foremost, thanks to everyone for getting them in the packets. And as staff, we are here to answer any questions that you have.
Any questions for staff reports, first of all?
Yeah, I have some questions that for folks as I was reading through the reports. Thank you again for that. And kudos to the BOT for getting our reports in. All right, I'm just going to say that we actually did it this time.
Well, thanks for leading by example.
Strategic planning sessions that you went to for the CML conference. I'd love for you to share some of the learnings that you got from the Healing Our Politics course and the what was the other one? The strategic planning session.
So the strategic planning session, I attended the Colorado Municipal League, and the strategic planning session was actually really focused around some of what we just did, but really creating the visionary document for the board. It didn't go into detail, so it didn't go into the creating the specific goals and objectives. It went into more of the importance of that visionary framework and why you have to have goals to drive you forward, because so many things are being thrown at a municipal government all day long, that it's important to have that framework to keep coming back to. Of course, talked about, the value in making sure that your goals are tangible, but also encourage you to strive for something, which I think is what was captured well in what we have as our strategic plan. The other session about healing was really focused a bit more on counseling opportunities available for boards and commissions. So wasn't quite what I was expecting. I thought it would be more about what are ways in which we can ensure that, the staff are healthy and happy and have strong kind of mental health. It was more about what could this specific company offer in terms of counseling for boards and commissions.
Okay, gotcha. Very cool. I like the term that came out of that, the destination stewardship as well. I think that might be a good phrase for us to continue to use as well.
Yes, agreed.
Cool. Nikki? Oh, I was just going to go to the list unless we want to go by person. Billy, do you want to go by person on the staff reports?
No, I keep going.
Okay.
You can go ahead and ask everyone.
Okay, cool. Nikki, the rink, I'm not quite sure. Like, I know that there was some things that were happening, like the meeting and everything, and you articulated, but is there anything else going on with there? What was the contention over specifically?
So there's contention between the two different boards up there, the rink board and the MTPA. And we had a meeting with town staff, ProSat board, MTPA, as well as the rink board. And we're able to successfully, and Eric Coombs-Ismail came as well. And we were able to successfully kind of mediate the two parties.
But the issue was, and forgive me, I know it came across in a letter at one point, but I am
So
still forgetting.
MTPA, Rink wanted me to put in a curb and do some other things immediately. MTPA didn't want me to do anything. So there was kind of a contention between the two boards and myself, where I'm trying to kind of make steps toward a completed rink eventually, whether or not we get a GOCO grant. And the rink board kind of pushing a little faster, and the MTPA board saying, let's not do anything.
Gotcha.
So it
Okay.
was a little bit of contention there. We were able to successfully mediate the situation, and we'll be dropping in a proposal for a grant on Thursday. So
Okay, cool. Thanks for that. I just needed a little bit more context. I
No
was
trouble.
Getting lost in the details. Andrew, coolness on water meters and fire hydrant and I got this actually out of, I think, part of the water report. So how many water meters in all are we replacing? And how are we doing on that?
Our goal for 2023 is 100 meters. I haven't counted.
It was 100.
Yeah, I haven't counted recently, but I think we're around 50 right now.
Okay, cool.
So we have no concern about reaching that goal this year. Behind the scenes, I'd like to do a little bit more, but shooting for 100 publicly.
Okay. That's a good goal to aim for. You're 50% there. Okay, cool. And then how many repairing out of service fire hydrants do you think we're going to have to get to?
Four that we know of right now. We expect to find some more as we continue to inspect hydrants this summer.
Okay, cool. Cool.
And some of those out of service hydrants will be replaced and some will be repaired. We have a contractor lined up for the repairs. Still need to work on the replacement, but feel good about getting it done this year.
Cool. Very cool. My only other question, Dawn, I feel like I've heard so much about the stair climber. This is like a really important piece of equipment, huh?
Yes, it is.
Oh.
So they, 5280 Fitness Repair should be here this week, and they will give us the verdict. It'll either be a $1,500 repair or a minimum of a $5,000 replacement. We do not have that in the budget, so we might put out a donation jar. I don't know, on the desk. I don't know. We might be able to swing it in the budget. Well, we can see what we can do.
Gotcha.
So it's a very, very, very popular piece of equipment.
Okay.
People have a love-hate relationship with it.
Bummer. Peter, I have a question for you regarding Nederland 150, which sounds so cool. Like super stoked about it. Who are the folks that you've assembled so far to start working on that?
So far, I have reached out to the library, community center. I included Parks team. Who else was on that? Barb as Mountaineer, DDA, and Peak to Peak Chamber of Commerce. I included Christian for the Chamber and Kate Massingale for the DDA. Oh, I also included Carousel Happiness and the Farmers Market. So kind of our larger community organizations right now. After we kind of do an initial brainstorm, I'm going to do some public outreach to see what people want to see and what they think our 150th birthday should look like.
Gotcha. Okay. Are you at this point, are you inviting like other public members to be on it, or what's your strategy?
My strategy was to keep it small to get a framework started and then expand from there and then get more feedback. But I am also open to suggestions to get if there's anyone that really is chomping at the bit to get some ideas on.
Okay. I'll be on the lookout for folks that feel motivated by that. Okay, cool. Thanks everyone for your staff reports. They look good.
Any other questions for staff? From any of the BOT members? If not,
Did all
we'll
this information in the staff reports. I want to say that much. It's really great to keep track of this stuff. What we document and measure is what we can improve upon, and it's how we grow.
Thanks, Jesse, and yeah, thanks you all for your reports this week, month. Appreciate it.
Oh my gosh, I wanted to say something real quick. Did everybody catch how much interest we've earned through that CSAFE account? $21,000. versus 1,500 from the year before. I just wanted,
Yeah.
I just wanted to do a call out on that in terms of like fiscal strategy and whatnot. That's like super cool. That was really cool. Question, how do we capture that interest I mean, do we get to capture that interest to come back out of the 1.5 million? Rita, I'm guessing that's a question for you. Or does it have to stay in there for a certain amount of time? Help me out with that.
Not understanding your question. What are you about the 1.5 million? So yes, for now, it's staying in that account. Yes.
So if
If
we want to
that's what you're
scrape
asking.
that 21,000 off to put into towards some sort of project into next year, are we hampered by that in any way? Like, can we not do that?
I don't think that's an issue.
Okay.
No. In
Okay.
other words, in your financials, that interest is part of it. So
Okay. So okay.
that's interest income, correct?
Sure. Okay. I just wanted to, I was just trying to make sure that there weren't any roadblocks and for us to
I don't
capture
think so.
that
In other
interest.
words, you know how, I don't know by heart, but we can obviously withdraw funds from that account. From one of them, the lower 500,000, I think we can do so many per month. I don't know by heart, but I don't think that's an
Okay.
issue at all.
Okay. Thank you, Rita. I just want, just shout out to everyone who was involved in that decision making. I know we made a decision as a BOT, but that's cool. That's really cool.
Thanks, Nicole. Any other questions on or kudos for the staff reports? If not, we'll go into BOT reports. Any questions on those?
Thanks to Nicole for writing up. This is getting people are reading this. It's getting a lot of community buzz.
The goals,
Yeah.
the strategic goals.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's getting the party going just in time for comprehensive plan.
Yeah, thank you. And I forgot to write that in my report, but yes, I did do that as well. And Miranda helped with helping me get the dates and everything on it. I do want to give an update in terms of the number of housing surveys that we have received. When I did my report, I had mentioned that there was 233 responses, but as of Friday, we had 252. And
we got 2 more today, and then tomorrow I'll be picking up the paper surveys from the senior lunch, and we'll be adding those.
Okay.
So expecting some more.
Yep. So I expect we'll get another 10 to 15 on top of our 252, way surpassing our goal. So, thank you to Peter, to Britt, to Miranda for helping out in that initiative to drive those numbers. That's cool.
We don't always start fast, but we do get there.
We get there.
Pacing. But and then survey I think is going to close on Friday, the 21st.
Yep.
I guess you wrote that. Thank you. Any other questions or comments on the BOT reports? If not, we'll go ahead and
I do want to say thank you to you and Miranda for just chalking off time for this so that we could just read through it and then have a discussion with it. I appreciate that. And not having so many other things on the agenda. I appreciate that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Welcome. Yeah. Thanks, Miranda. So that brings us to our first item being in discussion item for the evening, the strategic plan. Miranda, do you want to?
So just a little kind of context. So before you tonight is the strategic plan for 2023 to 2024. For the community to know, the Board of Trustees held 2 goal work sessions. The first one was on April 15th, where Chris LeMay, who is our Department of Local Affairs rep, and for those of you online, Chris is in the room with us. He led a session that really first focuses on roles, responsibilities, rules of conduct for elected officials. And then the later part of that goals work session just kind of was an open session where Board of Trustee members could talk about what they felt like were goals for the upcoming year. We also did a similar activity with the department head. So we didn't share with the department heads the goals of the board. We wanted an opportunity for both to just think through this independently. Chris then helped to do a cross comparison of the goals from both the department heads and the BOT and really broke them down to, what kind of did we all speak to and try to create some sort of framework that we then talked through on June 23rd. The Board of Trustees came back together for their second goals work session along with the department heads, and we narrowed down those two lists and identify what is our top priority for 2023 to 2024. Pulled that into kind of a baseline draft, and then Trustee Sterling's really took it from there and helped to dive into each of the respective goals to make sure that there were measurable items and that there were timelines associated with those. So tonight is that document that was developed. Department heads and BOT members have provided some initial feedback, but looking forward to a larger discussion tonight about what's in this document, and then of course some public feedback. Trustee Sterling, I don't know if you have anything to add, or Chris?
No, the point is to celebrate those successes once we start knocking these things off, right? And to be able to tell the public, we said we were going to do this and we didn't. And so that's probably what I'm most excited about. And it was really important for me to get as specific as possible, just so that we could measure it and so that it was relevant, right? And all those smart facets of a goal making. So excited that this could be, as I think, Tom, you put it in an email, this could be our North Star for the next 18 months. Yeah.
Question for you, Miranda, on, let's see, Foster, let's see which goal this is. Bullet 5, pave Jefferson Street by June 2025. Is it 2024 or 2025?
So we put that towards the end of the TIPS grant. So the TIPS grant is set to end June 2025. Of course, our goal is to try to do it next year, but in the rare chances the sidewalks take longer than expected, we would be looking to finish the paving in 2025. So in talking with Mark, who is on, we just felt like that was more appropriate date. But of course, with any of these dates, our goal is going to be to try to get it done as soon as possible. This is kind of just the final deadline, but that installing of the sidewalks is really the make or break piece, because if we can't get the sidewalks installed into the end of the summer, then we've run out of time to do the paving.
Okay. And under emergency preparedness, we have finishing up our emergency operations plan by December. Is that on track to finish in December?
Yes, and Troy is also on. I don't know, Troy, if you want to speak to that.
Yes, it's been somewhat started, but the majority of everything that's been done since I took the position and we created it in March has been education of myself in the role, as well as building some relationships throughout Boulder County and the state for emergency management. But it has been started, but it should be completed before the end of the year, at least the basic one. And then as time progresses after that, we'll add specific annexes to address specific events that could happen.
I just want to offer that reminder too, that the emergency operations plan and EOP is really meant for staff itself. It's really what are our emergency support functions? How do we show up? It is not a community guiding document. It's just making sure that if an emergency happens, that our team is ready to go to respond appropriately, and that we also know who to connect with. So to Troy's point, we kind of took a framework from other communities, and then Troy's really adding the Nederland piece to that.
Got it. One last thing on emergency preparedness. I was surprised to hear in the class we took that we're responsible for having a rebuild plan as well. Is that something we anticipate doing?
I don't know, Troy, what you want to speak to that. I think it's hard to prepare, especially from the rebuild standpoint, what are all the respective disasters. It is my understanding that, when a disaster occurs, those are some documents that have to be made in the thick of that disaster. What is your recovery plan? Because we can't plan for every recovery, but Troy, do you have more to add to that and all that you've learned?
No, I'd say what you touched on pretty much covers it. And in some future meetings I have coming up, those are some things we were going to address also on everything that we need to have in place for any kind of event that may happen.
Great.
But we would encourage, there is another elected officials training, that is the training that Mayor Pro Tem Mahold is referencing that we took last year. Dawn and I went. We would ask that every elected official try to find a way to carve out time. All of our department heads are going to go, but it's really important to understand your roles and responsibilities in a disaster. You know, again, staff are going to be boots on the ground, but board members are going to have to make a lot of quick decisions in some of those moments. And so understanding what those are, I think this is very important. And Gilpin County puts it on for free for both Nederland and then their county.
Yeah, I think they ran simulations that were incredibly eye-opening. And then I think just as important is thinking it through ahead of time is knowing when to keep your mouth shut. On the public facing side, who says what and when is really important, so we don't confuse people.
And that's on September 14th from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. in Blackhawk, at the Blackhawk Public Safety Building. And you can register in advance, so.
I'm curious.
Any
Yeah, I'm super curious to hear from all the other trustees about the goals and how they're written.
I think out of 3.1, the comprehensive plan is going to make a lot of this become very real. Stuff that's aspirational now. I think it's super important we get this right, because we're going to be long gone and people are still going to be looking at this.
I just have one question. If it's not written in the goals, that means it won't be done in the next 18 months? Or is that just more of a guiding document, but not a binding document?
You mean, can things be done that aren't in the?
Correct.
Without thinking too hard, I would say yes, because I think there's things being done that aren't in this, or am I missing something?
Well, Tanya, what's one of those things that come up to your mind that's not in here?
Well, I've always had conversations about getting our code, what's the right word? You know, where the muni code and the written code are compared and make sure there's no discrepancies and get everything dialed in, like a reevaluation of everything in the code, for inconsistencies is been on my list for years. And then the other thing related to the code, I mean, there's many things that that are in my mind, but was one of the things I mentioned to Miranda was when we have a sergeant, for him to go through the code and help us make it enforceable, so that when somebody calls up a complaint, the answer isn't, well, there's nothing I can do about it. And I don't understand why that's been the answer so many times when things I think are pretty clear in the code, with penalties and fines and whatnot. But since that's been the answer a lot in the past couple of years, I wanted the new sergeant to go over it and let us know how we can make it enforceable, so that when somebody has a code complaint, it actually gets heard. That's only one thing I'm thinking of. I'm sure there's other things that will come up in the next 18 months of, perhaps creating parking might become something that could become a conversation again after the parking or road studies done, which I think that's going to be in 2024. So then that might end up becoming a conversation again, because we were told to put all that stuff off parking until the transportation plan has been done. So and then the housing plan, I know there is stuff about housing and how to make, so that's in there, but just things like that. When some of these plans are finished and then we're a year out from now, there might be something that we could do about it. And I don't want to be handcuffed by this document.
So I'll let Miranda respond about the code, the overall haul of the code changes, because we did talk about that as well. But that's something that we'd need to have an agreement on. There's a great risk when teams, what, it doesn't matter if it's a team in government or a team in a company or anything, when they come together and they create these goals and then they say, oh, but we're going to work on these other things as well. Then you have the same problem that you had before where you have 10 number one things that you're trying to do and it's all competing for attention. So the risk would be that we fall into that trap and we don't actually knock off the things that are on here because other things are coming into the midst. So we as a group, as a BOT, would need to decide on that. Like, what's the criteria? And we had kind of talked about what some of that criteria might be at the last goals session is, hey, if it's being funded by something outside and you've got a champion that's not a BOT or a staff member, then cool, that sounds like it could be something that we would, if it came before us, we would consider. But these are the real questions. This is the real rub that we have to agree to when we agree to these goals. And so I'd like to hear from others on that.
I guess one thing, and it's Miranda, so a couple things on the code change. I think when I was talking about this a bit with Trustee Sterling, recognizing there are already things that are going to happen. The sergeant, that commitment's already been made with Boulder County Sheriff's Office that the sergeant will look at our code and make adjustments. And so some of the things that are already in the works, calling them goals when they're really just our day-to-day responsibilities and tasks didn't necessarily feel appropriate. And so recognizing that what's on this list is kind of these large scale projects where I view, and Boulder County agrees, that one of the first tasks of the sergeant is to do that cross comparison. In terms of the municipal code comparison, we are going to secure some estimates about getting some professional assistance with that cross comparison. That's a huge undertaking of staff, and just recognizing that there may be better personnel to assist with not only the code comparison, but maybe some of the documentation organization who specialize in that.
Well, I fully agree that you should hire outside help, but since it's not on the goals, it sounds like it can't even be brought up.
Well,
I'm just wondering, like, if it's not on the goals, then it just put that idea out of my head for 18 months. It's not worth thinking about. Kind of, that's kind of how I'm feeling about things with the goals, but I think that's fine.
Well, so Miranda, I think the other thing is the comprehensive plan is when that overhaul, I think, Tanya, what you're talking about is where there's inconsistencies in the code. Once that comprehensive plan is done, that gives us sort of the latitude, or it's like, okay, now we've got those guiding documents. Now we can do the code changes to and clean everything up.
Specifically, I think you were looking at land use a lot for the comprehensive plan. You're looking at a lot of land use related codes. So 16, 17, 18, where we have some of our other challenges, that's going to be legal expenses. And so taking the time to adjust, 7, which is, noise, health, and animals, some of those things are just happening as needed, and really recognizing that as we identify code changes, we're tackling them as they come. A complete overhaul is going to be a very expensive undertaking, but to Trustee Sterling's point, these visionary documents have to guide us in how we're going to amend our code to make sure they're in compliance with the plans before us.
Okay, well, for instance, parking, because we were told not to even bring it back up until the transportation study's done, and then it can be assessed, some of the parking ideas that the Planning Commission had brought to us a couple times. But I don't see anything like that on the goals. And for instance, the parking over by the Fisherman's Lot, which is not on the 18-month goal. And I'm hoping it gets done before 18 months because they would be good. Simple sort of something to make it look better over there. So I just, I understand we can't if I'm just more worried that if I write and say, when is that parking going to be done on Fisherman's Lot, I'm going to get the response, it's not in the goals for 18 months and sit tight. And that's fine, but so is parking completely off the table for 18 months, I guess is what I'm asking.
Well, I think there is an opportunity if the board chose, you have obviously this whole section about completing plans, that you could tack on some language that says, completing your multimodal transportation plan and implementing the short-term goals, because that document's going to have short-term, mid-term, and long-term goals. And so if there are short-term goals that should be completed in 2024, I don't see why that language couldn't be amended as such in objective number 3 to note that whatever comes out of housing and multimodal specifically, short term gets added into, that kind of automatically triggers that that's going to be added into the strategic plan because it's now a goal on a supplemental plan.
And what about the fisherman's lot parking that was supposed to be in the plan for that, which is already started? So that seems like that should be one of the plans that gets finished too.
Sure. Yeah. So Trustee Carvalhan have recently reached out, and none of the staff who are, department heads were a part of those conversations, but we did recently identify that a part of the development of Fisherman's Lot was that the town staff streets department would go back and develop parking. So unfortunately that did not get passed down to staff, but I plan to talk to Mark about it tomorrow to see when we can add that in, but currently not in our timeline, right? We haven't planned for that. And so we
But
need
if
to.
I'm worried if it's not in the plan, then it's not going to happen for 18 months. See, that's the kind of stuff I'm worried about.
Well,
It would be said, oh, well, Tanya, it's not in the plan, so please stop bringing this up. And I'll be like, okay, fine.
Well, I
but-
think the whole point of bringing this to everyone, Tanya, is like, hey, what did we miss? Right? And so, so if you're saying, hey, what about the fisherman's parking
Well,
lot?
yeah, because when it was brought to us as the BOT, it was showing all these nice parking spots, and everyone was like, well, since we're not really going to lose parking, seems like we can give that land away. So then, and somehow I don't know how that didn't get passed on and that's just, it's fine. It's not a big deal. It's only just finished, quote unquote finished, because it's going to take years, right, for the plants to grow. But I'm just bringing it up. And so, yeah, I guess I would like to see that specifically mentioned in the 18-month planning, the parking around there. There's the ProSub has a picture of how it's supposed to look. I'm not married to that design, but there was like 10 spots or something.
Well, this is a discussion item tonight, so this is.
Right, I'm discussing it,
Edit
yeah.
those, and so I'm wondering whether like under objective 3, number 2, that we just create some sub bullets of some of these things you're talking about, or, wherever we decide it's appropriate, but that we insert what you're asking about, because, the Fisherman's Lot for one is underway, and the parking lot, we had parking presentations, and then, the streets department really had to enter in and say, well, this is what we're doing, and this is our game plan. And I think that is important for the parking, for the relevant department to weigh in, but I think we can insert those kind of things as we see fit as sub bullets. This is an idea that I'm just having right now.
That's the right place to put it, though.
Yeah, I think so. And then it is listed as one of, in the strategic goals.
Okay.
Question for you, Andrew, on the GIS. What are we envisioning there? And is it just your team, or does it go across all of our assets?
I believe it's going to go across all of our assets, and it would be documentation of all of our assets tied to a location. And then I would like to track all of our work to those assets. And so we build a database over time that has a lot of information and is easy to use and will help us with future planning of infrastructure and projects, and help us track our work better. But I think it all starts with that GIS database, which previous staff did start, but we need to get it out, kind of shake off the dust a little bit and update it.
And so streets will use it to parks.
I believe so. I think our most recent conversation, Mark and Miranda, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think, in parks, I think during the strategic plan discussion, we agreed that it would be a town-wide initiative.
Excellent. Okay, great.
And you all are doing that work, the GIS work?
We have a very, very small contract with a contractor right now to just get us started. But we'll need to budget some outside help to get us started, kind of push it along next year. But ultimately, it is something that will need to be, taken on by staff and needs to be part of our daily routine to be used.
On the subject of infrastructure still, on the SCADA that you used to control the system, that I just want to make sure that's safe, secure, and stable. Can I assume all three?
Yes. There's good safety controls in place. We have someone that, the inventor of the SCADA system is on call for us all the time, and he's built a really good system. He was actually up here on Saturday helping us repair something. And he works closely with Randy, our IT person, and there's a lot of great controls in place, including needing security keys. And so you can't access anything unless you have a physical key attached to your computer. And then I'm sure they'll be much more eloquent than I am about that, but I feel very good about our SCADA system.
If you do, I do too. And Miranda, on the bridge, 3.5 million for the bridge, do we kind of know already where we intend to go to try and secure that? 3.5
So
million?
we still are in consideration for the congressionally directed spending. There's really no timeline on that. I reached out and they were just like, it's a waiting game. We'll let you know when we let you know. So obviously if the congressionally directed spending doesn't work out, then we will need to evaluate different funding sources. The reason it's in the way it is because of the ask before Senator Hickenlooper and Senator Bennett, and hopefully that works out. I think other funding sources, the challenge is for congressionally directed spending, we have to bring 25% match. I can't say the same for other grant. So we're just kind of putting our eggs a little bit in that basket for the time being until we hear whether that is accepted.
Beautiful. Okay.
I just have, go ahead, John.
Go ahead.
Oh, just about on number 5, the tourism management, marketing and branding strategy project. I would just say complete it and kind of scratch that whole to help locals communicate to existing tourists about our identity and how Nederland wants to be treated. I don't understand what that means really, and I kind of thought that marketing and branding was more about generating business and managing the tourism, and not so much about, I don't know how Nederland wants to be treated. It's not the words I would have put. I don't know if it's words a lot of people in our community would have put either. And I think if you just scratch that and just say complete it by April 2024 and just leave it at that, it would just give it a little more wiggle room as to what our goal is on that, since I think we have to have no discussion about that.
I'm glad you brought that up, actually, because we got a comment last night or today that kind of talked about that specifically, and I think, that my understanding is this is kind of how we're focusing on tourism management. Is it's really about educating. I mean, I think the public comment made sense, except what's written here, maybe it could be written a little better, is actually what we're a little more focused on, which is educating the tourists that come here about being good tourists and what we value and what we need. I think that same comment pointed out the fact that the Peak to Peak Chamber of Commerce is really maybe the better engine to go after tourism, building tourism in the area. And I think we can do that to a degree, but am I misunderstanding that, or isn't a lot of what we're thinking with our tourism management just about educating the folks that already come or will come, but
Correct.
not building tourism? That's really
Correct.
Yeah, this is Peter, by the way. I agree. I think kind of focusing on the education side's probably a better way to word that, just in general.
Okay.
Yeah, I see a lot of confusion about like what our goal is. So I think, you're right. The wording needs to be refined a bit.
A little bit, yeah. It's a little awkward, in my opinion.
Oh, thanks for pointing that out, Tanya. And also the public comment that came in. Thank you for that, because I think this clarification will help with that comment.
Yeah, and we're just gonna have to say it over and over again, just because of how the grant reads, that it's not about bringing in more and more tourists. It's about managing and educating, like you said, the ones that we have. And of course, a lot of the short-term and long-term goals on that reimagined destinations were all things that a local, like for locals, right? It was about beautification, ADA sidewalks, reducing congestion. Those are very locals first type of things to be focusing on. And so I think that's where we should put a lot of our energy toward.
Yeah, I'd like to develop more businesses for when we do have a Ned Gravel come to town for people to have lunch, spend money and spend a little more time here.
That's another goal, short-term goal of the outer edge is attracting more business, or at least removing the barriers to getting more businesses here.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I think we could use everyone's help in that, and that it is absolutely not about generating more tourists. We have enough tourists just because of where we sit, right in this location. We have enough. It's about managing the expectations when they're here.
So going forward, this is a discussion item tonight. I would presume if we have a little word crafting to do, the organization is largely intact. When does this, are we heading towards an action item to adopt this? Make some flashcards?
I think so.
For a little test?
That'd be awesome. Yes.
I was gonna ask Miranda, like, what are your thoughts on like the timing or, the quote unquote deadline, or when is good timing for this to
I mean,
be?
it sounds like there are minimal changes to bring back, so I don't see why we couldn't bring this back for adoption on the 1st. Unless people are feeling otherwise.
Given that we're more than half of the way through the year, I think it's great to do.
I do think it's important for us as a BOT to have the conversation though, like, okay, what does it mean, right? Does it mean if other projects come up and, that we go and focus on those things? I mean, I think it's super important that we have solidarity together as a team of what exactly this goals means to us, this goal sheet.
Yeah, I'd almost ask for a little more time, so we do have time to talk or edit, or, like the 15th maybe. Just because that looks also
I think
pretty.
my only ask would be, we did send it out to all the Board of Trustees and we didn't hear back from you all. So my expectation then would be that if we do push this out, that people are responsive, unless they're gonna, I guess, I'm not sure I'm understanding why we wouldn't just use this format as an opportunity, but
Yeah,
those are just some questions.
I think the format is good. I just want to make sure, something you said right up front, that as you go through this, you can find the line item in the budget that this ties into.
It's super important because if it's not backed by dollars, it's not going to get done.
Mhm.
And so that's our responsibility as a BOT, is to make sure that there is that fiscal component tied to it. But I think also there is this idea of what happens when other projects come into our rearview mirror. What happens then? And I'd love to hear from folks.
Go for it. I have one coming later, but go for it.
Yeah, thanks for doing all this work, Nicole and Miranda. It's really great. And all to us too for doing the days and the workshops. I think, kind of to Tanya's point and to the fact that, we're never going to get it all done and we're never going to get it all completely right. That it's really important for us to build into this an ongoing process of revision and updating. And so as much as I like that we're putting down some concrete objectives here, I think that committing to a process and doing what we can to establish a bit of a custom for the way in which we do it here in Nederland is really important. And to the extent that we could build that into this document and whatever it is that we adopt, I think that would be really beneficial to us and our ability to plan and get ahead of a lot of the things that we're trying to create. So that's one thing. Thoughts, discussions. I have more points, but I just wanted to see if there's any pushback on that.
Well, what does that mean?
That means that within this document, we essentially add a line item. It could be probably in one of these objectives. I can't remember which one. But we say we're committed as a BOT to do this again next summer, for example, every summer after that.
Yeah, among other things, we'll likely have different people on the
Yeah,
board.
so we'll have a different board. Circumstances are going to change. Things happen. We could have a disaster at any time, and we have to respond or adjust to that. But I think this is really good for healthy relationship between the public, being the BOT, and the staff. And so I'm in full support of adopting this plan, something very similar to this, with a couple of adjustments that I'd like to see, which is that we somehow build in this process itself is part of the objective. essentially, if that makes sense.
You mean that the
Well, we
the
did
goal
our,
setting that we
yeah,
do is
exactly.
written in here.
Yep. Yep. So, and that ultimately is what democracy is all about. You know, it's a set of behaviors and values that we're all pledging allegiance to. And this could be our Netherlands version of how we're doing that. And, you know, it may or may not carry into the generations that follow after us, but I think we can do our best to build this into our ongoing routine as a board.
So would that be an objective, or would that be sort of a commitment at the top?
Yeah.
You know, it's like the kind of the introduction.
Yeah, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, I would like it to be sort of one of the guiding principles of the entire document, that this is a process that we're engaged in, that it's an evolving, living, dynamic thing that gets revisited and updated every year. And I like the idea of doing yearly objectives and 3-year event horizon, and then 10-year event horizon as part of our ongoing process. And I also like the idea of asking town staff what it is that they could be most supported by the BOT, and then vice versa as part of the ongoing process. But I don't really care about the exact details of the.
So I do want to be mindful that the comprehensive plan will do that long-term planning. And I think the point of this is to be more narrowed short-term and not duplicating what these other plans are about to do for the town.
I agree. You know, I think that last time we talked about going for the RFP for the comprehensive plan, we discussed how one of the reasons why we were really in support of it is because it's something that we all feel we should be updating every 10 years at least, and it was outdated by 10 years. So that, you know, I feel like that is sort of a cadence of regular meetings and planning that should just kind of get built into our customary behavior as a town.
And aren't we by statute supposed to be doing comp plans every decade?
Correct. And so your comp plan expired this year and you're starting your next one this year. So it's not that we're
good.
off track.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know if we can somehow build that into sort of what this, what we adopt would somehow, you know, tell our future BOT boards to do it again next year. And if they don't, they get no water at the meetings. I don't know what the penalty would be.
Yeah.
Sure, and I think that's super healthy and would be a part of, I think, this process, but outlining it specifically for, like you say, posterity reasons, right, would be to articulate, like, this needs to be reviewed on an ongoing basis.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I think if we're going to adopt it, it's because we believe in it as a process. And, you know, if we're going to put aside our favorite agenda item of the day and, you know, and give way to this more guiding document, like is kind of what Tanya's getting at. I think that we need to have a method for coming and bringing issues back again.
Seems to me it would go at the beginning, you know, with that introductory stuff, kind of like the sustainability and the public engagement, that it would be up there as kind of guiding principle.
There was another thing that I wanted to offer as a discussion point, but I can't remember right now. It'll come back to me.
Other trustees, just what are some of your initial thoughts? We are going to go to public comment in a bit too, and then come back for discussion. John?
Yeah, just with the comprehensive plan, I'm curious, when the consultants come in, will this be one of those kind of teaching us how to fish perspectives, where we're actually going to work closely, or the town staff will work closely with the consultant group, so that this can be an independent process in the future? Or is this more or less kind of the ongoing process is to engage consultants every 10 years or whatever the cadence is for this, for the renewal of this?
Yeah, comp plans are definitely something you're going to want to engage those subject matter experts, consultants in. just given the components that have to be in there, especially with us using the energy and mineral grant, there's a lot of different pieces that we're just not the right people to update such a large plan, such a visionary plan. We're going to want a third party to help guide us. Plus, we're also very close to these subjects. We need someone to help us look at it from kind of an objective lens. And so I will always say that comprehensive plan should be done by consultants. But yes, I mean, town staff, board of trustees, community members will all be a part of planning this document, which is why it takes 18 months. The whole point is to get as much community feedback, staff feedback, board feedback as we possibly can to ensure that this final document is comprehensive and it really captures everything that the town is seeking for the next 10 years.
And if town staff were working on it, nothing else would get done.
And, you know, I think we've experimented with town staff leading different activities and just recognizing that is not our strong suit. Our strong suit is to be here to do these tasks for you all, to execute the tasks for the community and the Board of Trustees. And we need those other consultants to help us with the planning components.
And just out of curiosity, with the DOLA grant, will the total cost be 200,000? Is that
Correct? Yep.
reasonable? Okay.
It's a 50-50 match where town has brought $100,000 and then DOLA has awarded us $100,000.
Okay. Yeah, I was trying to calculate that out in terms of salary over the 10-year period. I don't know if it works out. It's a lot of work.
Yeah, I think just really though, you know, none of us are qualified for that. I think we're very qualified people in many ways, but not to be doing comprehensive plans. That's just not what we can bring to the table. What we can bring to the table is after the plan has been built, we're your team who's going to execute it.
Got it. Okay. Thank you, Miranda. No, that's all for me.
So the one thing I would just point out, kind of a comment came to us that made me think about this some more too. You know, when I initially looked at this draft, I kind of moved some sequencing, or I suggested some sequencing changes, which happened. But the secondary bridge as a standalone, especially when we talk about budget, I mean, $875,000 is a lot of money. And so I do kind of in my mind kind of question, is that something that goes there, you know? And so a totally open discussion, not stuck on it either way, but you know, just reading that comment, thinking about it, thinking about other things that the secondary bridge gives us and you know, other issues it causes for us. And then looking, you know, from a budget point of view at $875,000 matching funds and just kind of questioning that a little bit as for where's that going to come from?
So my only comment would obviously be, you know, you gave we don't know what will happen with the congressionally directed spending, but I think what we don't want is what kind of happened with Big Springs, where now we're not prepared, right? We didn't think this through and we're awarded, but we can't come to the table with the match. I think that that's why there is a need to have some sort of commitment here, because I would hate to see, I worry about our connection to our representatives if we keep getting awarded funding, but we're not quite ready.
And on that, for that reason, I'm totally on board with keeping it here, because I don't think it's an accident that Nagoose didn't support advances. Only the senators did, and Joe Nagoose didn't. And I think, you know, I was asked by Claire Levy, you think they'll get you think he'll get behind you when you didn't really do the Big Springs, spend the money that you were given? So yeah, it's for that reason, I'm totally behind keeping it there. Coming up with the money.
And it's also, you know, that public comment was about prioritizing that over Big Springs egress. But Big Springs egress, that's because it's in our strategic goals, that will have to be budgeted for in 2024 for 2025, right? Like putting it in there is that reminder to us, like Tom was mentioning, is like there's a fiscal component to all these things that we have to look out for. So
yeah, and I guess the $875,000 caught my eyes.
Yeah,
fiscal.
it's
Where does that money, I mean, who bidded this out at $3.5 million? JVA? Is that?
Correct. JVA estimated, gave the board an opinion of probable cost for 3.5 million.
Which location? The one on town property?
There wasn't a location. A part of the opinion of probable cost that JVA brought to the board when you were asked to approve this was to also study location.
Gotcha. Well, I mean, I'm in support of keeping it on here because it seems to be a really important thing for our town to have for emergency and maybe for general traffic flow. And as far as like where the money would come from, I guess we'd pull it out of our reserves. I don't know, or find another grant to fund that grant.
That's right. Yeah, this one is like a long time locals ask too.
True. It is. I mean, you hear both sides of it, but I think the part about showing commitment
Yeah.
to the federal government and our representatives make me
Makes sense.
sways me.
Mm-hmm. Jesse, do you remember your thing?
It's non-substantive in a way. I just wanted to work a little harder next year on our retreat, on our workshop. I feel like we just kind of scratched the surface, and I'd like to go a little deeper next time.
That sounds awesome, and I really appreciate all the staff that came that second day. That was awesome. I'm going to go. I'd like to go to public comment if that's all right with everyone. Folks, Chris, you're in the room. I don't know if you have any public comments, but since you helped us with the goals, but folks online, if you have any public comments, raise your hands or go ahead and just start talking.
And if town staff has comments on it as well, I'd love to hear those.
Yes. Actually, let's go with public first, and then we'll just bring it back for town staff. I want to thank everyone who did send us emails. We got quite a few last night and today, so they're not in the packet, and I think they will be probably next week or next meeting. And they'll probably be non-agenda items, but felt like we got a lot of good feedback from folks that, send us in some ideas. So appreciate that. Oh. So hearing no public comments, staff, do you have any comments on the goals? No need for timer.
One of the things that I appreciate is that we all came together as a group, and I was surprised to see how many similar opinions that we all had. So that was pretty cool to see. The parks goals are set up in a way that I feel like they're achievable. And to speak to some of Tanya's comments of can we do anything else while we're doing these? The way that we've set it up is where we've set up for success. And I don't see a problem completing, as we check off each box, then we add more, but it's the idea of it is to be able to check boxes before we start piling on top. So.
And can I just add too, sorry, just really quick on top of Nikki and then to Dawn. Nikki and Dawn are longest standing employees, and they actually had shared with us that that was the first time that staff were ever invited to this kind of session where goals were being evaluated. And so I think that definitely speaks volumes to that desire to kind of go into this together, to create these together, and just really appreciate to the Board of Trustees recognize how important it was for department heads to be able to advocate and share their desires. So I really appreciate Nikki pointing that out, and what a huge moment that was to actually have us at the table too.
And maybe we'll do a Christmas party.
We're getting there. Well, thanks. But I don't think we thought of that. You thought of that, Miranda, and we appreciate that. It was really during the first BOT meeting that you just brought up, the idea, and it made so much sense. And I think we all agreed to it immediately, that having the staff there and the department manager there really was like, oh yeah, then we can actually talk about what we actually can do and can't do. And so it made more sense. So appreciate you setting us all up for that. So that was great. Any other staff comments?
I just wanted to agree with what Nikki said. Thank y'all for including us. And I think it's very important for us to be aligned and to know where we're going. And to your point, Jesse, I really appreciate the 18-month. It's achievable. We see where we're going. We can get there. It's not 3 years out and 2 different BOTs. And yes, there's always going to be turnover, but that's manageable. So appreciate that. Thank you.
Thanks, Don. Any other comments from staff? If not, Jesse, did you have something you wanted to add?
Yeah, I thought of the 2 other points I had. I wrote them down this time. So So one is, in kind of along the same vein of having a routine or establishing a bit of a custom of coming back and revisiting this plan on a regular basis. Also for the sake of reviewing these objectives and seeing how we did as a team, as a collective, as a community towards moving the needle on these, I think is also important. If we could somehow build that in to this, whatever it is we adopt, I would really appreciate seeing that.
So we come back to it and kind of like say, yes, here's what we did, here's what we didn't do.
Yeah, so if in 18
Score
months
ourselves.
or in a year, we kind of go back to it and say, how did we do on all these things? And we all forgot about them altogether. That would be information.
And actually, this was a critical piece that I completely forgot. Staff reports will mirror what's in these goals. That's our request. That would be an ongoing request,
Oh,
right?
that's nice.
And so that we are getting updated every staff report time because their goals are our goals and they have to update on that.
And that if there was to be something new that was brought forward, that there's in the aim, it's clear how it ties to the strategic plan. So it isn't us just saying, and this is a fun idea. Like we too are held accountable as staff to not bringing in something fun and new, myself included, but that we have to tie it back to the strategic plan as we bring forward items. So kind of seeing that accountability in two places.
Yeah, and I wonder if we may be able to, and perhaps I'm getting a little ambitious, but attach metrics to each of these objectives and therefore have some way of measuring success.
So that was one of the things that we had talked about. And in some regards, we had tried. Oh, it's not. Okay, that's not me. And so agreed. And part of the question that I would ask you is, are we at that stage yet? Because some of these things are it's such a stabilization year that unfortunately a lot of the things are activities. There's things that we kind of have to knock off instead of saying, hey, we're going to reduce X or Y or Z by 20%, because we haven't been in that mode to measure that before and after. And so if you see where there are opportunities to do that, I'm like all for it, because that's how a really good objectives and key results are supposed to be written. But I was even struggling, because I do this a lot for companies, I was even struggling how to do it to make it measurable from a metrics standpoint. But if you've got it, please let me know.
I'll review it and I'll send you and Miranda both my thoughts on that.
Okay, cool.
I like the idea about judging how it goes in a year. I also like the idea of coming back and revisiting, adding and changing goals. But I would like, it would be awesome in a year if we could go through that list and say we did a bunch of stuff. And if we're not getting it done, there should be a discussion as to why we didn't get it done.
Yep.
Things that, for instance, once the housing study is completed, then we can start talking about ways to make it easier for tiny homes, homes to be built, whatever, all the different ideas that we've had running around that we have to wait. No reason that in a year from now, those couldn't be done. So I want us to try and move quickly on these goals.
What was that last part, Tanya, that you said?
I want us to move quickly on these things. As quickly as I know there's a public process and all that, but it would be a bummer, if 18 months from now, all these things are still on here. I mean, I know we still have the same goal. We're still going to want affordable housing and all that. That's not going to go away, but it would just be one of the things that is so frustrating for everybody, I'm sure, is just the bureaucracy and how long it takes for things to get completed and the process. And it's just the process, I understand. But now that we have this written down, I would like, and we're going to be using this as a guideline for what we work on, I feel like it's no excuses now and we can focus and get things done.
Can I make a staff
good.
comment?
Yeah.
I wasn't involved in the goal process, and I think it's really cool to hear old staff say we're finally being invited, and the Board of Trustees is, we're kind of on this similar path. And I think it's good for both parties and public to recognize that not only is there new Board of Trustees members, there's new staff, and this staff is creating goals to actually show the public that, here's this year-to-year plan we actually want to accomplish. And so I think it's good for us to kind of clear the past of what's been done and actually see like we're stepping up as Board of Trustees members and staff and really getting this done. And it's good to take the present staff you have, not the past. Just wanted to add that comment in there from someone who wasn't a part of this process, but has been watching it.
Thanks, Britt.
I got another one. So, you know, I was on the Sustainability Advisory Board over 10 years ago, and then I was on the Planning Commission for a while. And then for the past 7 years or so, I've worked pretty closely with town staff and utilities and Chris Pelletier and his staff when he was here. And a couple of things. One, I want to reiterate what Nikki and Dawn and Britt, you all said about just how it's good that we worked these things out together, even though it's never been done before. It feels normal and like we should obviously be doing this every time. So I appreciate you guys speaking that out loud, and I hope, you know, I hope this gets built into our customary behavior. And I was really kind of well, disappointed that there was, you know, when we had the holiday party and we didn't get to have a party because it was kind of like, well, you guys want to do your
See,
thing.
it wasn't just me. It wasn't just me.
And so basically, you know, I've just always really loved working with town staff, like out in the streets and the trenches when we're doing things, and just the camaraderie that I've felt there. And you know, I feel like it's really important that we have a good relationship, and that's like something that I think is worth trying to be deliberate about and intentional. And you know, we could even measure it. You know, we could just with a subjective answer, obviously, but that to me seems like it's something that I would very much like to just, you know, respond back to you guys. Let's keep doing that. And kind of maybe on that note, I feel that you know, being on the BOT and the Planning Commission a long time ago, and now the SAB and the Planning Commission, and now ProSab and BOT, I've kind of felt that a little bit like some of those other advisory boards can be a little bit in a silo related to the BOT. And, you know, Miranda and Macy and some of the rest of you go to various other meetings, but the BOT doesn't, I don't feel, have a strong enough relationship to all the other boards and advisory boards and whatnot. And I think it would be great if we could build in this objectives with various advisory boards too, so that we could somehow build in like a way in which we're regularly kind of checking in with one another. We're all acting as kind of a unified front in many respects, so that advisory boards are kind of focusing more intensely on some of these objectives, and we're kind of you know, maybe the masterminds of it all or something. But if we could somehow kind of say like, oh, ProSab might be better suited for this particular objective, which I think is already in there a bit, but if we could just kind of think about that as a discussion, right?
Yeah, I mean, maybe as liaison, you bring it back to the ProSab, you know, to the board you're working with or commission you're working with, and that's an item, say a discussion item for a meeting, and as liaison you present, and yeah, I mean, look through it and kind of maybe if you're with the BZA or if you're with you know ProStab, there's things in there that you don't need to bother with, you know, so you can probably edit through it and just focus on the things that zero in on that board.
Well, what are your thoughts on that, Miranda and BOT members?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, you know, we sent out the strategic plan to all the boards and commissions for feedback. We didn't rotate it through. So if that was a desire, we could commit to the month of August doing so, or just bring it around and say the board adopted this and how do we align? But yes, I mean, all of what's great and really appreciate Trustee Sterling's taking the lead. You know, all the boards and commissions are going through something similar. You know, they're building out similar plans. You know, maybe the exception is the BZ and the Planning Commission, just because of the way in which they function is more code based, but ProSab, SAB, DDA are all doing the same thing. And I think doing the kind of the cross comparison of seeing where they all align is great. I don't necessarily want to derail the work they're doing and feel like they have to align with ours, but where do we find those intersection points? I think that'd be great once they're finalized. They're all kind of in the mid of their process.
Is that something they have any interest in sharing with us, or is that really just kind of?
Yeah, I mean, they're just not done yet.
I can give you an example. I think the most, it was either number 1 or number 2 on ProSab was to update the Prost. That's on our list. It's here. Yeah. It was number 1. Okay, there you go. It was number 1 by all 5. That's on our list. And so that's one of those intersection points that we can hold the board accountable for, and ProSab can say, yep, this is what we're going to deliver on. And so that's one of those intersection points for sure.
Yeah, great. That's kind of what I'm trying to speak to, I suppose, is like in this document, can we somehow build in those linkages? Similar to, can we build in an intention or an objective to meet again and redo this list or update or revise or review this list in 18 months or 6 or 12 months? Can we also somehow build into this, if we're going to adopt something, some sort of linkages between these other boards and these objectives and the BOT? It's a question, I think, for you, Nicole, as much as anything, because it may be something we think about or talk about offline, but.
Yes, and if you have like a specific
Suggestion
item,
for how to actually do it?
No, or like a specific item.
No, I think across the board, like if we could look at all the objectives and say, hey, this is the planning commission's bailiwick. So we're going to try to task the planning commission with supporting us with this particular objective, or staff.
Yeah.
I guess,
Or BOT members as well. So there's a piece of me that looks at this list and is like, and I remember Miranda saying a long time ago, it's so great when BOT members are champions for certain things. Like, we know that it then gets pushed forward. That's what Eric was for annexation. That's what Billy and I have been for housing. Tom's freaking looking at everything else, in the state and the capital and everything. And, Jesse's on ProStep. And so it's like, I think it's one of those things too for us as BOT members to take a look at and be like, okay, so who's got it? Or right? And yeah, who cares? And who's going to help be the champion for staff to do this? In addition to, yeah, absolutely, the advisory boards. I think when it comes to especially the CBD as a sub-area plan that we're going to tackle first for comp plan, NDDA coming your way, right?
Yeah, I've always been interested in this.
Right, exactly. But that would be something that, and we're going through that process right now with NDDA. Of establishing their goals to be continued. But that would be something that, yeah, it would, that would be a question to NDDA. Hey, do you have the time and the people that are going to be able to dedicate to this? Because, as Tanya has said to me, like, if we focus on too many things at once, we're just going to get fatigued. But what are the concentrated number of things, that 1 to 3 things that if we did it, we'd knock it out of the park, instead of having so many things to do and nothing gets done. So yeah, love it.
yeah, Miranda, I don't want to round robin this around the boards. I think what I like is that we're there, whether it's next meeting or the one after, we bring it as an action item, and then that as liaisons, it's brought back to the boards and commissions, and again, that you champion, you focus on the things in this goals and priorities, strategies that are focused on that board or commission, and you head back there and know which those are, and you are the champion, and you help that board or commission understand those, focus on those. If they're one of the commissions or boards that's going through this process with Nicole, then you can cross notes on or you're probably part of the process anyway. So yeah.
Yeah, but it might, and I don't know how the rest of the BOT members, the trustees feel about this, but of like looking through this list and being like, okay, who's going to be a champion for, I don't know, like, one of the things that's not represented on our goals. And I get it if nobody signs up for it, but maybe we should at least be asking the question. I don't know.
I didn't understand. What's the thing? I thought you mean.
For instance, like, I know that you're pretty involved in water, right? But we don't necessarily have a board champion for emergency preparedness, or,
Gotcha.
things like streets or something like that. But like, to be a champion and to be a support mechanism, I don't know, maybe.
Yeah, I think So, and those ones are all interesting examples. I used the word interesting. Water, I think we're doing we're good on championing. We're all championing it the way we need to.
Yeah, that one's
And
big.
so,
WebEx.
in the emergency preparedness, I think really Troy needs to be allowed to roll with that and then really come to us. And I think the same with streets. Like I would really rather Mark Hall be the champion myself, and then come to us and ask us for what he needs, his team needs. That's just how I look at it on those particular items. So not everything will be championed by the BOT, I guess, is what I'm thinking as you're asking.
And I guess my question is, leaving it to Miranda, like if there are gaps on the goals list that you feel like, hey, actually, it'd be kind of cool to have a champion, just like a champion to kind of drive things through, right? I'd just be interested to hear what that is.
Yeah, I'm happy to bring it up at our department head meeting I think with all the departments heads here, correct me if you feel otherwise, but I think when we look at champions, like, yes, there's great for specific projects to champion, but in general, we just want you to champion us as staff. We want you to champion the work that we're doing, stand behind us, get behind us, advocate for us, help when there's misinformation and maybe Peter hasn't had a chance, like getting ahead of it too alongside us. And I think that's what we look at as champions. And then of that kind of above and beyond is when we have a very specialized project that you help move forward.
I guess I think I said it in one of the ProSab meetings about how if our advisory boards, we want a job. So, I think it's good to have champions, and I think advisory boards can be champions as well, or we can find champions in advisory boards. But I really want to have a mutually beneficial relationship between our town volunteers and our town staff. And I think we have we've made a lot of progress, and we're doing really great right now. And I think we can continue to build on that and continue to do better. And I think one of the ways in which we make your lives more difficult is by coming up with new ideas every 5 minutes. And then, so this is great because it helps us all focus, and it helps you guys focus. And it's like, we've gone through this extensive process. We've whittled it down. We can all focus. And now what if we could also turn loose our volunteers to be productive and supportive, as opposed to coming up with new ideas and trying to run you guys every different direction. So that's where it's like, hey, we have a big opportunity to have a really great high performance relationship here between town volunteers and town staff. And how can we think about, and could we even find language to build it into this document that we're going to adopt to somehow say how our town volunteers and our town staff going to work together to achieve these things. I think we're just tapping the potential, like we're just scratching the surface and what we could do, and how well we could all perform as a community with all these volunteer hours that all of us volunteers are dedicating every meeting. And if we could be deliberate about that, we could get in the staff's way a lot less, and we could actually be supportive a lot more. And that's what I would like to explore a little bit in between now and our next revisitation of this plan. And I'm happy to do that offline with Miranda and Nicole and anyone else who wants to talk about it.
Yeah, I'd be in that conversation. Yeah.
Can I say, from town staff, like, I think that's a great idea to keep it like going forward. But also I would say, like, I'm not a department head, but the biggest thing is like misinformation. I mean, I heard misinformation tonight, like, code enforcement, it's not being enforced. I can tell you I'm enforcing code enforcement with our code enforcement officer every week. And so it's more so before throwing out something that has happened, really just support town staff. We have those answers. You can reach out to Miranda. Just throwing it out before it's said, it's like it hurts our positions. It really does. Like, because that comes back and that's your role and you've worked really hard and you think you've made success. And so I think us letting go of past Board of Trustees, like relationships and really putting this in a document to have a healthy like standard moving forward is like a great idea. But I can say for mine, like just having my back is the best thing you could do. And definitely like, you know, us giving the opportunity, staff has been guilty just as, you know, Board of Trustees, we really got to build this relationship. I can say from my perspective, Nicole's been awesome. Billy's been awesome on the housing. And so like, it's really cool to really start seeing those relationships form. And I think that's a great idea.
I want to say thank you for recognizing that. You know, I think you've probably heard me say before, I need to check boxes. I need to be able to finish tasks before we start adding more in. So thank you for recognizing that this document is really going to help us to focus our energies into what we need to do. And as we check off these boxes, then we collaborate together with our, for me, ProSab board and the BOT and try and figure out what do we add next? What's next? But to constantly know for me that this document is going to be as near as important as my Prost master plan to give me a clear vision of what I'm focusing on. What do you guys want me to do? What does the community want me to do? And then add more stuff. Then.
Thanks, Nikki.
I think it would also be healthy that if something does want to come before us that's not on this plan, what's the criteria? What does that mean? What is it? What are the criteria that it's got to hit in order for us to consider it? And, you know, when setting the agenda, Billy and Miranda, if something comes before you that's not in our 18 months and it kind of feels like it's one of those things, what's your decision criteria for making that decision, right? Those are kind of some of the things on the periphery that we still probably need to nail down. And like Jesse said, probably have some ongoing conversations around.
Yeah, I mean, often sometimes it's just deadlines, you know, say grants and stuff like that. It's like we have a line in the sand and we have to make a decision by then, or it might be an emergency. We had a few of those last year. So yeah, it could be things we just didn't see coming. But yeah, I think in general, if we can stick to these for a general, you know, primarily, you know, in a perfect world, everything that we talk about, that'd be great.
And then it's also, we can start to be proactive. So we can look at the goals and be like, uh-oh, what haven't we heard on in a while? Or what, you know, that may not be reflected in the staff report. What should we be maybe prioritizing as a discussion item that we just, you know, because it's on our goals. So hopefully it allows us to be proactive too.
Thanks. Any final, actually, let me just take a quick peek at the old aim and make sure we're answering the questions, because I think I want to get us moving to the next thing. Does the BOT have any recommended edits for the strategic plan? You know, I heard a couple specifically from Tanya that we could go in there under 3.2, you know, or wherever it was, about possibly parking and can't remember the other. And then there was nothing specific about codes, but I think codes is kind of woven into this in a few places where, I mean, housing for sure comes out of the housing needs assessment. And then the land use with that, then 16 to 17 will start to get addressed directly. And then chapter 7 kind of is more as needed, or, you know, as a bit. Yeah. So I don't know that we have to add anything on the code specifically.
I think your whole plan section is going to result in code changes. And perhaps, as Trustee Corvalon had noted, maybe we can make that a little bit clearer, that in number 3, that in that maybe objective, we could add some clarification that subsequent code changes would happen. I mean, you're looking at just about all of them.
Yeah.
But it's committing to it and actually making sure they get done. Yeah, that's what I like about this.
Yeah. And then I think Peter or whoever, we could just clean up, not clean up, but just maybe wordsmith a little better that tourism management, you know, education, add the education kind of focus. I think those are the only edits I can think of. Any other?
Yeah, what Trustee Severs was talking about was wrapping in that this will be a periodic process that we'll revisit. We'll revisit the objectives. We'll also have staff reports reflected in these updates and find ways that advisory boards, maybe a mention of having advisory boards help align and champion some of these initiatives.
Maybe those could be put, at least maybe that could be put into that first part of the.
Well, I have a note about calling out Fisherman's Lot on its own, separate from the multimodal, just because it's committed to a different project, and I already have that set to talk about with Mark tomorrow.
Awesome. Yep, that was the other one.
Anything else?
I just wanted to add to Nicole's list possible metrics somehow, if we could consider including some metrics on our objectives plan.
Yeah, I will say one thing. One metric that's in there is just there's a lot of dates, so that could be considered enough, but we could think about something as long as we don't, totally mess up our brains trying to, yeah. Cool. Chris, thanks for all your work and all your time on a Saturday and then on a Friday helping us through the goals. We appreciate your work and also just the presentations you did with us just about in general town government and good ways to run town government. Do you mind just so the folks out there can hear you, just hit the little button so a green light goes on?
Well, first of all, thank you. Trust me, it's a pleasure to come up and work with elected officials and town staff and trying to help them develop some focus to their efforts. And I'm happy to hear some of the conversation tonight. It is a living document. It is dynamic, and so you will need to revisit this document at some point. But you definitely have made steps towards what you're going to spend your next 18 months in. So congratulations and best of luck.
Thanks so much for your time. Thank you. And our next item.
Can we get some clarification on when this is coming back, though? Because I don't think that's been determined.
I think given that there might be the possibility of talking through the possibility of metrics, or that's the only thing that makes me think, how about August 15th?
Nicole, you winced.
August 15th?
Just show me where the metrics need to go. Just show me where they are. Because I'm not sure. I'm not sure where those go.
That's why I think we should give ourselves a little time and decide whether they even going to go in or not, but if so, where. I mean, they would go in my mind, by each item.
But what would that metric be besides a date and an activity? That's what I'm trying to figure out. Typically, a metric will be reduce X by Y, right? And so these are very difficult because it's about stabilizing and there are activities that we have to accomplish.
I mean, maybe the bigger conversation is whether this is something we can do or not.
I have a suggestion. I feel perfectly fine with passing it as is at the next meeting if that's all that happens. I think it's really great. It's a document that reflects really good hard work and good clarity for all of us and for town staff, and I'm in support of it as is now. And so all of my suggestions were just things in which I would love to see that I think could make it a little better. And I will take personal responsibility for making proposals to each of you, or just Nicole and Miranda. Billy, I can bounce them off you. Tom, you if you like, anybody else. And if there seems to be support, or if there's any major pushback to anything I said, let me know. Otherwise, I'm going to make some recommendations to Miranda and Nicole and all of you for how we could make it just a little bit better. And if I don't get it done before the next meeting, then I'll pass it as is.
Okay, I mean, but in my opinion, like, we should be adding some of those things already. Those points you made, even by the next meeting, like, those seem good to me. About revisiting it regularly. Yeah, I mean, you have my advice, but so yeah. I would just say don't like, I would like to have this be something that we work off and don't constantly get confused along the way with, I mean, I want to revise and be innovative, but I also don't want to be like getting confused and getting distracted from what we already have down there. So, I mean, that's where, do we need the extra couple weeks just to make sure we like what we see, or we just do it in 2 weeks and then we stick with it?
I prefer the latter. I'd like to see this done. I don't want to go into the 7th month of the year still kicking this around. I mean, I think what we're talking about is almost done, and I just hate to see us kick anything down the road. We did that last time with an action item we had to push into the night, and cumulatively that piles up. So
Yep.
I'd like to move along it. We put so much work into this. I'd like to have it done.
Okay. Is that something you feel good about in 2 weeks?
Yeah, I mean, I think the changes we could do within like an hour or so, but if you've got those recommendations, float them to us for sure, and we'll see what let's see what we can do to work them in.
Yeah, and I'm happy to talk through them too over the next.
One suggestion, I guess, if anybody, I take it to heart, the importance of champions. If somebody wants to be a champion, put your hand up now and just put it in parentheses in there. And it just, if it doesn't have a champion yet, it's still important to us. But one or two of these is going to be very important to one or two of us. And I just say, put your hand up and take some ownership.
Agreed. Okay, so I think we're saying August 1st. I likely won't be at that meeting, so yeah, let's give me your comments before so I would like to see that. And
We'll put your.
I was going to ask you if are you going to be here on August 1st?
Yeah.
Okay, so Tom, do you mind leading the meeting?
I'll be here. I'm happy to.
Thanks.
Billy's gonna have his name next to everything. Champion.
Please add no metrics. Champion in my mind. All right, so with that, we're moving on to the rights of nature guardian. Do we need a break? Okay, let's take a 5-minute break. Let's take a 7-minute break, and we'll come back at 8:45. Welcome back. And it's our second discussion item of the evening, the Rights of Nature Guardian Subcommittee. And I think Miranda will be
So this is
kicking
actually
us off with I think Rich Orman. Right?
Sure. Yeah. So tonight, before you've got the Rights of Nature Guardian. This has been on your agenda a few times, but unfortunately, we haven't had a chance to get to it. So glad we can. And there are two Sustainability Advisory Board representatives here to present. Rich Orman, who is the co-chair, and Alan Apt, former Board of Trustee and SAB member.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mention you, Alan. Thanks for being here, Rich and Alan. Should we just have, they're presenting?
Correct.
Okay. Take it away, Rich and Alan.
Well, I don't know if Alan wants to go first. I'd certainly be happy to defer to him if he does.
Go ahead, Rich.
So as I think everybody is aware, a number of, well, a couple of years ago, the board passed this resolution, which actually made national news about recognizing rights of nature and sort of almost the way it was reported in the press was almost like a personhood for Boulder Creek. And part of the ordinance that the town passed referred to guardians of the watershed and presenting reports to the board and on a yearly basis. So on a number of meetings, we as the SAB went through all this and came up with the resolution that has been presented to you that would establish a subcommittee of the SAB to act as guardians of the watershed or river guardians, or I mean, the phraseology really isn't all that important. It's the concept. And that would sort of be responsible for looking into these issues and periodically reporting to the SAB and to the board issues relating to the watershed. And so that is what we have presented as the SAB to the board.
I think that's a good summary. And, you know, we don't have legal jurisdiction in the entire watershed, very little of it. And so the whole idea is just to stay in touch with the state, Boulder County, the city of Boulder, that do have jurisdiction, and stay in communication with them about potential activities and things they're regulating, and then report back to the SAB and the BOT. So we're really acting as a source of communications. You know, there's some language in here about, you know, we'll try to keep an eye on water quality, wildlife habitat, recreation and visitor impacts, wetlands protection, native species, and noxious weeds. And we don't have the ability as a town to gather that information, but what we will try to do is get that information from the county and the city. And I don't think the state necessarily, the state has a lot of responsibility in terms of water quality. So I know we'll report back to you folks what we find out. And over the last few months, I've sent you some reports with the information that I gathered. Probably got buried in your inbox. So that's what, you know, we will continue to do, keep you informed as to what, if anything, is going on.
Those were helpful updates, and I apologize I didn't always reply, but I read them and then put them in the folder, so I appreciate those.
Sure.
It was good to be up to date. Anything else, Alan or Rich, that you would add?
The only thing I think that people may have heard discussion of is I mean, as Alan said, there's really no jurisdiction. Frankly, the river guardians in this subcommittee is not going to have any jurisdiction of any type. The whole purpose of it is to provide information and to sort of be liaisons with other agencies and other entities. There's not like we can ever bind the town to anything or affect the rights of the town or resolve complaints or anything like that. But one of the issues that has been raised is, should this be limited to the town's watershed, in other words, the water that we use for drinking water, or should it be limited to the whole Boulder Creek watershed? Because, you know, there's water that flows through the town that we don't drink, right? There's water that flows from various parts of Boulder Creek that bypass our water supply. But it does go through the town. People fish in those waters, wade in those waters, what have you. So I don't know that we want to have an artificial limitation of the thing that goes into our water treatment plant. But I think that certain people in the community have discussed that issue, so I just wanted to bring it up.
Yeah, and I think, you know, we had a unpleasant surprise when we found out that the gold mine was polluting the stream. That has been on its way to resolution. I think they've cleaned up their water system, but the state and the county are monitoring that. We were not in the loop before we found that out. And I just think it's important that Nederland be in the loop when major decisions like that are being made by the state or the county or the city of Boulder. And that's the main goal. Let's be in touch with the regulators and let's be at the table if there's something we need to know about and get involved in the decision. And the county did a really good job. The state did a good job. The county had a public meeting about it in Nederland. And we're in touch with the city of Boulder at that time. So, but you know, we'll see what happens going forward. Any questions?
Thanks, Alan. Yeah, how about some questions from the BOT?
Let's go, Alan, this is Tom Mahol. Let's go back to the mine for a minute. Because at some point they will step up operations. As a watershed guardian, what role would you play or what are you proposing?
Just what we did before, which is I would be in touch with the state of Colorado and get a sense of when they're having hearings. Their hearings are open to the public, but they do not allow participation with the public or other governmental entities. So basically listen in, see what's being done, and let everybody know what is going on. At the last go around, the mine status was changing and there were going to be more environmental regulations they were going to be subject to, and they were going to have to apply for a new special use permit from Boulder County. As far as I know, they have not done that yet, but I want to follow up and see if anything has transpired. And I was in touch with some legals people who were monitoring what was going on there as well.
What are some of the other threats to our waterways, especially the ones above us, that in your studies you think we should be aware of? And then what role do we on the board, how do we get involved, and how do you plan to be involved?
That's a good question. I don't know what the other threats are, and that's why we need to be in touch with our jurisdictional people and see what might be going on, make sure that we're informed. And, you know, and I know that you folks on the BOT have been working on defining our watershed, which goes to the town of Eldora, and potentially coming up with a process for monitoring activities in our own watershed. And we can extend our jurisdiction in out to Eldora at that point. But I know you're gathering information on that right now. So anyway, it's certainly going to be our goal to gather the latest information that's available and provide it to SAB and BOT.
Thanks. How unique are we as a town? We stuck our neck out and went first a couple years back. Is that changed? Do we have others who've done the same?
Well, from what I've heard, we're the first town first governmental entity to actually appoint guardians. So I think we're leading the pack.
I think that 2 other towns in Colorado, or I don't know if they're towns or cities, have adopted similar ordinances. So I think we're one of 3, but I think Alan is correct. No one has gone so far as to appoint river guardians.
Cool. Okay. And then one last question, if somebody were doing a pro and a con over what we've signed up for, how would you do the pros and how would you do the cons? Either one of you could do it.
I think we kind of ran over the pros, but go ahead, Rich.
Do you mean the cons as sort of this whole concept?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think some of the cons have been addressed at previous BOT meetings where there might have been language that was proposed that could have potentially impacted the town's water rights.
Mm-hmm.
And my understanding is that through legal counsel that has been taken care of, and there's no such issue anymore. Obviously, the people that are doing this would have to be, and just so you know, the SAB board has sort of decided that it's going to be me and Alan as the 2 river guardians, which is why you have the 2 of us here today.
Mm-hmm.
We would have to take pains not to do anything that would be contrary to the interests of the town. As a subcommittee of the SAB, we are here to help the town board really to accomplish its goals and its mission and its duties to the town. The cons also are, I guess, if I had to search for some, is there really anybody that's going to benefit from this? And I think that Alan and I would work very hard in the communications that we have with the town to really attempt to provide information to the town that would be useful to the board and frankly to the residents of the town to know what's going on and to take action on if necessary. So, I mean, you could argue that it's just a waste of time, that no one's going to do anything, no one's going to read this stuff. So it's going to be our job to make sure that people will want to read it, that it's useful, and it's not a waste of time. That's really all I can think of.
Yeah, hopefully we can engage the town in the concept that, this is our ecosystem. And we certainly got a lot of positive feedback from most people in town about this effort. I think people here have strong environmental values
Mm-hmm.
and they understand the ecosystem concept in general and understand, looking at what's going on with climate change, we see that we're all part of the picture and we can't ignore what's going on around us. And maybe one idea I have too is perhaps contacting Ned High School, finding out, talking to the environmental studies teacher, seeing if any of the students might be interested in participating. And there are some, nonprofits that have watershed activities.
Mm-hmm.
And that's another potential thing we could look at. And, I think the town's doing some really cool things with, the old Fisherman's parking lot.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, a wetland, that's huge. And it's we're being helped by Eldora, and it's making it possible to build a facility for Ignite up there. So there's some really cool things already going on in our watershed.
So regarding the high school, the CTE program, the Career and Technical Education program, and they do have a focus on, I know there's outdoor, can't remember if they call it leadership or recreation, but there's also, it's kind of tied in some natural resource conservation, courses. And so, yeah, it would seem like that would be something that Gavin Goodrich and the school would be interested potentially in. I've talked with him about creating internships for students. So this does seem like one interesting option.
Two suggestions on the outreach side. Number one is put something out regularly about what you're doing through Miranda to Peter to post, because we're starting to do a lot more outbound. And number two, when I lived in Chicago, every Saturday morning, we had a group, a meetup group that would go out and walk a neighborhood. We did all 57 neighborhoods over time. And it would probably make sense, especially now when the weather is so perfect, to lead some hikes into our waterways with you and others that know the area, that have the permissions and that can explain and show what's going on. Some of us are visuals and kinetics, and I think it helps to get out, especially before the snow falls, before everything dries up.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea.
Okay, we'll talk about some more.
Okay.
Any other clarifying questions from the
So
trustees?
Alan and Rich, is there any budgetary concerns associated with this?
I don't see any budgetary concerns. Obviously, Alan and I are volunteers. I don't think that, town staff is going to have to spend any money. If we submit something, I'm assuming there's going to be staff time reviewing it before it's submitted to the board. We might talk to people on town staff about it from time to time. But like if I have to drive up to someplace to go look at something, or I'm not going to be submitting mileage or anything like that, and I don't think Alan's planning on doing that either. So I really don't see any cost to the town as far as budgetary at all.
I don't really see anything either. Certainly if something on the horizon appeared, we would try to work with you well in advance. And I'm familiar with the budgetary process, and I know that we don't have money laying around. So it would be a long-term proposition, but I don't really anticipate anything.
Any other questions, Nikki?
No, thanks.
Jesse, any clarifying questions? John and Tanya?
No, I
No,
just
I'm-
want to thank them for doing it. Thank you.
Yeah, same here. Water quality is very important, and yeah, I would also second some interest in Tom's suggestion to maybe have some form of community interaction program that allows people to understand just exactly what does become trace elements in those water systems. And actually, I did have one clarifying question. I did hear somewhere back a while ago that the town is allowed a certain amount of gallons or number of gallons off of Barker. Is that something that is that correct? I'm not sure how that would happen. Not sure how that actually would flow back into our water treatment.
So the town store, it's Miranda. So the town stores 39 and some change acre feet in Barker. That is a concern or a bit of a challenge for town because that's where our physical storage site is. But you're right, it is downstream from our water intake site. So it's really more of a documentation thing than anything. That's where we store our conditional or our water rights, our regular water rights.
Okay, thanks, Miranda. So that we've never had to exercise those rights. Is that a
So
fair
we
assumption?
do exercise those rights. I mean, really, I'm not the augmentation expert here, but basically the exchange of water taken off the stream in order to convert for consumable water versus what we then treat to put back into the reservoir. There's a lot of water accounting that goes into it that offsets that 39 acre feet.
Yeah,
Got it. Okay.
Hope we'll be looking at Barker as a potential storage site along with other things that you're looking at.
I would say though that I'd like to know that the Guardians and our water rights efforts are in separate lanes always, like that we're not. My take on that is this has nothing to do with water rights. I mean, it has something to do with it and needs, and they're very different efforts, and I think it might be risky for the town to let them cross over too much.
Yeah, we definitely don't want to see that, and we removed any language that would imply that. So we're in complete agreement.
So I've got a few questions. I'm an environmentalist. I'll preface this with the fact that I'm an environmentalist, and water is, a big deal for me in this role. And also, I feel the need to ask some kind of critical or important questions. That may seem skeptical, but I just want to know that we're doing this in a way that matters the most, I guess. And I think, you know, you two being, you know, town residents and, you know, having the experience you have in town government and your own careers and what you've done, you know, prior to this, bring a lot to the table. And my concern, or my, yeah, concern and thoughts is just, you know, who takes the baton later and you know, what about credentials, or do they live in town, or at least they're in, you know, I guess to be a SAB member, you don't have to live in town, you have to live in the greater community, but is that reasonable, or is it better if it's town residents, or, you know, looking out for town welfare? So those are some big questions for me, are like prereqs or requirements or credentials that the next guardians and on and on and on need to bring to the table.
Well, it seems to me that having it be the you know, the larger area, like for example, the library district, and at one point we had, I believe, a Boulder resident who was the sustainability coordinator with Eldora was on SAB. So I think having a broader scope for SAB members, as we currently do, is a good idea. And hopefully we'll have someone who will follow in our footsteps. But as you know, political winds blow in different directions and people get different priorities, and we can't predict the future. But we hope to make it an attractive activity and proposition that people would value and would want to participate in the future.
Thanks. And I'll get to something you touched on just then, but I'm going to kind of stay in order with my question. So how is the report going to be used? Like, how often are you writing it? What does it look like? How is it formatted? How often is it written?
Well, I think we're thinking at least annually, and I think it's quite possible it would be more frequent than that. I think the resolution says quarterly, and I think that's pretty realistic. And I don't think it's going to be anything printed and bound and put out for awards. I think it'll be, you know, some form of email that Rich and I can piece together for you guys.
So quarterly, does that seem like a task that will be maintained over time?
I think that's doable. I think, you know, as I've done already, send reports in as I found information. We'll do that rather than waiting till the end of the year if it's time critical information. And then, you know, try to do something a little more formal, either quarterly or annually. Does that sound right, Rich?
Yeah, you know, I understand the mayor's concerns about this. You know, having a quarterly thing will tend to creep up on us. But frankly, if we're not doing anything and our quarterly report is we didn't do anything the last quarter, I think that would be helpful for the SAB and the board to know, you know, that, well, okay, what are they actually doing? So, you know, sort of keep a track of what's going on. I think the yearly report is going to probably be a little more substantial, but I don't anticipate anything really big. Or you know, it's not going to be like some 60-page thing from the EPA. But, you know, it can be whatever the board wants it to be, right? This is, you know, a proposal that we're making to you. And if you think that's too much, you know, we're here to do what you think is best for the town.
And we might need your assistance in contacting people like Boulder County and the city of Boulder, because we're not elected officials. And so if they're ignoring us and we need some clout, we might need to have the mayor or the mayor pro tem or Nicole, our liaison, put in a word and say, she would really like to know this. I'm an elected official. So we might need your clout to gather information. I was an elected official the last time I made the rounds and had really good success. And I'm not anticipating problems, but I hope you'll be willing to put your names on an email with us when necessary. But we won't expect you to put in time and effort.
And that actually is another question, is real quick. What about potential staff time and additional burden on staff? I mean, I guess potentially the BOT as well, but staff time is really the main.
Well, we certainly will want to stay in touch with staff, and that would primarily be Miranda, just keep her in the loop as to what we're doing, but the staff reports to Miranda, and anything would go through her. And of course, we have to be approved by you folks. But if there's some water quality thing that the staff has worked on or discovered, they do that water quality report. If there's any issues surrounding that, we might loop them in. But otherwise, I don't really see us going to staff. I don't think that'd be appropriate.
Thanks. Yeah, they're pretty busy. So yeah. So thanks for being with me while I give you what may seem like a barrage, but I feel like they're questions that need asking and answering. I think, when you brought up someone from Boulder, the B word, I'll just say, and she was awesome, but nonetheless, down the road, and like you said, political wind has changed. I mean, if there's concerns with any outside interest being able to use this info to kind of either, I'm kind of expressing concerns, like what is a way for us to better, like, how are we going to use this information? And then are there ways for us to protect ourselves from outside interest being able to use this info to either sway the BOT or worse, challenge us successfully in court based on some of this information?
Well, we certainly have done everything we can to avoid any litigation, and that's going to be our goal. And I'm hoping it's just going to open up and we'll continue to have good open communications with City of Boulder, Boulder County, State of Colorado. So I think this is an opportunity to collaborate with them and, Colorado Parks and Wildlife, anybody who does have jurisdiction or regulates the Forest Service. So just another line of communication, friendly line of communication to take advantage of.
Mayor, one of the things I think you're referring to is maybe something could be in the report that we submit that then could somehow be, brought up in a lawsuit against the town or something like that. And
Exactly.
I think that is a valid question to be asking. One of the things that I would want to do in reviewing anything we were submitting to the town is, first of all, I would not want to mention any person or any corporation or anything that anyone could consider defamatory or libelous. So it's not like we might say, oh my gosh, this company is I'm not talking about any company in particular, just hypothetically, this particular company or something is polluting or doing something wrong or something we don't like. That is, I don't think, that is not in our purview as river guardians. I think that would be something that would not be helpful. Now, maybe if someone was doing something really great and we wanted to talk to them about it, we might want to include that, but I would want to talk to the person involved before and get their approval for anything written. So I don't think that is something that we're going to do. Certainly, we wouldn't ever comment on the town negatively or any issue that the town was considering in a negative light or in a critical light. This is, or at least we wouldn't do that without talking to the board first. But I understand what you're saying, and frankly, if people other than me and Alan at some point in the future would be the river guardians, I couldn't speak to the way they would write reports. But I don't think that's going to be an issue as long as the two of us are the ones involved.
Well, I think it's helpful that you have a whole career in law, and I'm confident you will write nothing that would put us legally at risk. And when you move on, chances are we won't always have someone with a career in law as a guardian, or, even if it's a couple of folks. And so it's just, a concern, and whether that has to be passed by our lawyers, and then, there's costs for that. But those are my thoughts.
So perhaps a guideline or standards as to what,
Yeah,
how the
I
report
feel like
would
we
be
need more
written?
guardrails around this, you know, as it's written, like I myself feel like it needs, and I have specifics that would guard us, and, you know, because I'm full faith, I have a lot of faith and full faith really in Rich and Alan. It's beyond them that we just don't know, and we could just end up with someone either with bad intentions or more likely just naivete.
Right.
And just all of a sudden we're in a legal bind that we didn't see coming.
Well, I think you have the opportunity at that point to interview the people who are involved and make a judgment call. We had our attorney Jennifer Mattson look at this, and I think our water lawyer looked at it too. So it has been vetted very carefully legally. And going forward, I don't think right now, I don't think there's really any jeopardy involved.
Well, this has been vetted, this resolution, but I think what Mayor Billy's trying to articulate is the report that you guys will produce doesn't necessarily have the guardrails or the guidelines or the criteria necessarily of what's going to be involved in that, so that it doesn't get us into a lawsuit of some sort. Mayor Billy, with that?
Yeah.
Yeah. I see. Okay.
Well, if you want us to send it to Miranda, who can then run it by Jennifer, that's your call. But I don't, as Rich said, we're not going to be inflammatory or stick our necks out or do anything that's going to jeopardize anybody. You know, this is a feel-good exercise with a lot of environmental information. So I don't see with us involved.
Yeah,
anything
no, I know that the intention is 100% the case, but I also know that the rights and natures of first written was not vetted well, and all of a sudden there was some like language that was troublesome for the town, and so they did have to do some amendments to that, you know, with strong legal guidance and you know, and fix it so that now the rights and nature, you know, but isn't as risky for the town, but it's just kind of, could this be just something that keeps happening over time with other, you know, I mean, you know, it's more thinking, you know, I think with Rich having the history, you know, career in law really helps, you know, but that won't probably be the case ongoing. And, you know, then, and, you know, and also like a guardian, if a guardian really has an agenda, you know, I would also want to have it written so there's limits on their ability to override or bypass the BOT.
Really, what would be an example of something that would put the town at risk of a lawsuit or a problem with the Guardian report?
Well, say someone's tied into a business, and actually I don't have, well, like I could make one up, like a mine.
Make one up, yeah. 'Cause
Someone's,
I was trying to
someone's
wrap my head around.
associated with a mine, and they kind of give us some sweet reports, and then, you know, it turns out there may be something else going on, or their report somehow sets us up in a position where later on when something comes to light and we have to really take a different position, we may get tied to something legally, and I think it'd be foolish to just think that could never ever happen. I think it'd be more a naivete and kind of just someone not knowing any better leading us into shaky waters, but like it could also be intentional. But I
Will
feel
they
confident
be
that's a
using
possibility.
quantitative measuring devices to measure, you know, chemicals in the water? Is that part of
I
your?
I don't imagine these guys are doing that kind of work.
So it's just more like walking around and everything looks good, everything doesn't look good, plants are dying, plants are living, that kind of thing?
No, it's more, I mean, when I heard Rich and Alan saying it's really more communication with primarily county and city of Boulder and county of Boulder to get their information. The state isn't necessarily and correct me if I'm wrong, Alan, but the state would be another entity, but I don't know how much, how much communication they're getting from the state, but communicating with those bigger agencies on events or, I mean, communicating with them is all I really heard, to find out. And like Alan had given us a heads up before about some hearing that was coming up around Cross Caribou Mine. And, he was paying attention, so we got that heads up. But, so that's kind of part of what they're doing is just paying attention and communicating. But I don't imagine
No, I
it's
thought
set up
they
for
were
folks to take
physically
water samples or
walking.
anything like that.
You said in the thing, in the aim, it talks about water quality, water, noxious weeds, and general state of the creek. So that requires that you guys will be walking.
Is that true?
I mean,
Rich
that's
and
what it
Alan?
said in there.
Well, I think I would anticipate, yeah, I mean, us going around and looking around, and I would anticipate, once this would happen and the community finds out about it, we may get people contacting us saying, hey, you guys are these river guardians, look into this issue. And it may be something that we would look into to report back to the board and the SAB, or it may be something we would say, hey, that's not really within what we do. Or there could be a news report about some ecological issue in the watershed that we would say, hey, we should look into this and take a look. I don't have any expertise really in watersheds apart from one college class I took in the 1980s and then a job I had where I went around and actually did do measurements of creeks and lakes and things like that. But I don't intend on putting on waders and getting into the creek and measuring the water flow or anything like that. But I don't think it's going to be limited to communications with other governmental entities. So, I totally understand the mayor's concern here. I do think that, you could put guardrails, for lack of a better word, on what you want in the reports. Or you could maybe wait to see the first report and see if you want to do it at that point. Another thing you could do is if you're worried about people in the future that would do this, you could also make it a requirement that the BOT approve the subcommittee. So, I mean, you don't normally approve subcommittees of your boards, but if, because of the nature of this one, you might want to consider doing that.
Oh, you mean like the Guardians being a subcommittee?
Yeah, that's so the way we have drafted it is the Guardians are a subcommittee of the SAB. That is the way we have thought it up. Obviously, there are other ways to do it, or you could even, I think, say the subcommittee of the SAB of these river guardians needs to be approved by the BOT.
That's an interesting idea.
Right.
Interesting idea. So I'll try to be quick with my last few points. I think, it's important that we, put limits on the Guardian's ability to override or bypass the BOT or the town in any kind of litigation efforts. If we get someone who's a Guardian who's like super ambitious and super idealistic and decides, we got to sue this entity for what they're doing and kind of just tries to work around the town. I mean, that to me is a concern. And I just think ultimately the BOT needs to remain sovereign, and whatever comes out of these reports is advisory only. And we often will be psyched and take it as great information to move ahead with. But we are also free to, go a different direction. And so those are just some of, just that we can consider a report, not be bound by it. And also I did hear you say earlier that that I've heard people say, why would this be focused on the entire Boulder Creek watershed from 3 drainages that don't even come near town all the way down into the flats and Longmont until it hits the St. Vrain versus like just focusing on the middle Boulder Creek and what affects Nederland. So I'm glad you brought that up. That's a question I have too, whether we really would want that greater information. So those are some of my thoughts, and I just think it needs more specifics.
Also to clarify, because Alan, I want to make sure I interpreted what you said correctly. Are you saying that also the reports that you guys produce will need to be reviewed by Attorney Madsen and Attorney Ladd?
I don't know that they would need to. I could see the board wanting that, and then I think I see where you're going with that, is that would be a cost to the town, and that would
Yes.
actually have a budgetary impact, and that's true. You know, I can see a way that these river guardians would operate without providing written reports. If that's the case, I think that the utility to the board would be greatly decreased. And it would really just sort of be a feel good, you know, touchy-feely thing as opposed to something that you could use.
Yeah, I think a lot of this communication is simply going to be taking what happened at the state hearing, what is the state's findings on the water quality, what about the county, what about the city of Boulder, passing that information on without any embellishment, without any political spin on it. So that's what a lot of this information is going to be. What does the Colorado Parks and Wildlife think right now? Here's what they say. Here's what the Forest Service's concerns are, et cetera. So it's really passing on information to the BOT, to the SAB, and then you obviously make any decisions. We're an advisory, we're a subcommittee and an advisory board. That's all we are. And we're offering to gather information for you.
Yeah, I think that
That's
pass-through
all we're going-
information.
all we're planning to do. If
Sorry.
you don't want that information, so be it. You don't have to read the report. But there's no scope beyond what I just said. No, we don't have the staff to gather this information, and it's a good fit for the SAB. You know, somebody contacted me a while back saying that somebody was dumping stuff. So I just passed that on to town. So
I
do
did
think,
follow up with that, and he said he won't do it again, by the way. Thank you.
yeah. So there's an example where someone in town
He said he knew that guy
about it.
was looking when he did it.
Yeah, contacted me, said, hey, do you know this guy's dumping stuff? And I contacted Billy, who knew him, and it was resolved. So I think real minor situation, but you know, people in town are aware of this effort and do appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciated that. So I'm going to go to public comment quick, and then we'll bring it back to make sure we answered questions before the board. Any public comment on, there's no one in the room, so if anyone out there virtually has a comment on the rights of nature guardian, please speak up. So hearing none, I'll just come, the question before the board is, does the BOT have any questions about the Guardian Subcommittee resolution for SAB? Any more questions? Trustees?
Oh, I just want to say I like the idea about having maybe the BOT approve the subcommittee.
Thanks, Tanya.
And it's
Well,
my
I appreciate the
understanding- isn't
I
that what-
appreciate the work you guys have put into this for sure, and you know, I have a lot of faith in you both, and I appreciate you all those questions that you know answered and talked through and discussed those questions I have for you. Thanks. Anything else, folks? Miranda?
Discussion item, where do we go from here with it? Do we have to take action? Or
I'm of the opinion that I'd be happy to be part of this, that we just put some more specifics in there and then bring that back. I probably bring that back, Miranda. Would that be best brought back as an action or as a discussion if it was edited, or is there a way to?
I think you'd want to edit it offline.
Yeah, yeah.
time for that, so I don't think it should come back until it's ready for an action item.
Okay, cool.
Because you also want to allow SAB the opportunity to look
Yeah,
at whatever edits.
yeah, I'm happy to be, since I'm the big pain in the butt in this, I'm happy to be the one who helps edit that, and then we'll move it back through SAB.
Liaison, get this under control.
There's no controlling him. There's no controlling him.
And I do just, Leah Haney's on, so I just wonder, Leah, if maybe we talk, and Rich, I know you're not going to be there, but talk with Melody about getting this added on to next week's agenda to start some initial discussions. I don't know if you can join there, Billy, but I think that since there's more than two, I think it'd be ideal to do this under a SAB meeting, talk through some of those changes.
What day do we?
Thursday, the 27th at 6:45.
Unlikely. I fly out the next day, so maybe I'll talk to Zoe. Thanks.
That's always the right answer, Billy.
I'll talk to my boss, Una, the 5-year-old. Thanks. No, thanks for, my opinion is we can make this better and then stand behind it. Thank you. With this, thanks for your time, Rich and Leah and Alan. We appreciate it.
Thanks for your support.
Thank you. I think you've been very insightful, and I really appreciated the feedback. Thank you.
Thanks, Rich. Thanks, Alan. With that, we go into our action item for the evening, the fence code ordinance. There are two listed. I'll comment on the second one. We're really gonna let's focus on the first one first. It's the fence code ordinance, Britt and Miranda.
Yes, so the fence code ordinance had a public hearing date for June 20th, but due to the limitations of time that evening, it's been rescheduled for this meeting. During the January 25th meeting, it was brought to the Planning Commission's attention that the Board of Trustees requested the PC review the fence code and offer recommendations on way to clear up any ambiguity. I knew I was going to mess it up. Inconsistency. Let's just go with that. It's been a long day. So the formal discussions began at the January 25th, March 15th, and April 26th. The PC directed a formation of the subcommittee, which was Commissioner Rivera and town staff. The initial issues brought to the PC's attention were that the fence height code should match International Residential Code, and where should the fence height be measured from. So during our March 15th meeting, Commissioner Rivera presented two options. One of those was, do we just go to 7 feet, make it easy? The other was, do we try to keep some of that original language with 6 feet and add language that designs or different variables would allow you to go up to 7. So maybe those little structures to kind of fancy up the fence. Overall, the PC found the simplicity of recommending the change to 7 foot across for the height made the most sense. After researching and reaching out to various sources, Commissioner Rivera presented picture diagram and new language to be possibly added to our code. To help assist town staff and other third-party officials better understand where that fence height should be measured from. The PC agreed with Commissioner Rivera's recommendations, including the additions of the diagram to be added to the amendment of Chapter 16. These discussions at the meeting brought forth some additional clarities needed. Does IRC or IBC recommend fire-safe materials for constructing a fence, and should we recommend those or require them? When it comes to the screening of a junkyard and an individual's ability to build an 8-foot fence, which property owner gets to build that 8-foot fence? And then should the PC consider changing fine amounts for fence code related issues? At our April 26th meeting, after being presented with Fire Marshal Jocelyn's recommendations for the construction materials, the PC found it might be better to offer it as a recommendation sheet instead of requiring it. It was significantly more expensive, as you can imagine. So this is something that myself and Marshal Jocelyn have gotten together on and are creating kind of this, like, if you're building a new house, this is recommended, not required. And for the screening of the junkyard, the PC found that both of the property owners should be allowed to build up to that 8-foot fence. After reviewing the recommendation of Commissioner Vera to not move forward with changing the fine amounts, the PC agreed that this would be the best step moving forward. After no additional recommendations in agreement with the recommendations Commissioner Rivera and town staff presented at the PC meeting on May 24th, all commissioners unanimously voted to recommend approval of ordinance 842. I am going to kick it over to you, Mayor Billy. He reached out and got some information for us, and I didn't know if you would want to chat about that.
Yeah, so we work with ICC directly quite a bit. Actually, the president of the board of directors of ResNet is a vice president of ICC. So I reached out to a couple people there, and basically they said it's really about a 6-foot fence, but the 6-foot fence has to sit a couple inches above the ground, and then there's undulations in the ground usually, and then there's fence posts, and sometimes a decorative cap. And so over time, it was decided, I think right around 2000 up until 2012, I think is when they made the change, but that they went from 6 foot to 7 because it was really just to give enough room for a 6-foot fence to be installed. And so that is why the ICC goes with 7 foot. And so that's the logic. Came from 2 different sources, and they really more or less said similar things, similar logic. And yeah, that often kind of like, often even the standard 6 foot, as you can see on page 145, like even the standard 6 foot fencing is often like 6 foot 1 inch, 6 foot 2 inches. So even the 6 foot fencing is more than 6 feet. So that's why they moved. And so I appreciate Crit. Yeah, I think I told Crit, the planning commission, I would look into this, and Chris Rivera did a great job, and then Britt, you took it and did a great job, and all the PC. And so yeah, it was cool to be able to go to ICC though and kind of find out why they just bumped to 7. So
Absolutely. Yeah, so with all that being said, our question before you guys is, do you approve ordinance 842, amending chapter 16 of the Nederland Municipal Code? Do you have any questions?
And it's 847, right, Miranda?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, okay. Just one.
Thank
Yeah, we identified a ordinance number error, so if approved, we need you to approve it as amended to ordinance 847.
any clarifying questions for Britt or Miranda?
Yeah, I have one. So the including the retaining wall, then 8 would be allowed as measured from the downslope side of the fence. Correct.
Are you talking in regards
Well,
to the
just
junkyard?
reading, if it's the fence is built on top of a retaining wall, the measurement would happen from the upslope side of the retaining wall. And it would only allow for 8 feet from the downslope side of the retaining wall. And so that would really only allow for a 1 foot retaining wall to kind of factor into that as additional fence height credit, so to speak. But the maximum allowable height for a retaining wall is 4 feet in our code currently, if I understand correctly. Can you help me? I don't mean to make you look it up, but that's my understanding of the code for Nederland is it's 4 feet is allowable without an engineering design. And well,
So it's not actually in our town code, it's going to be an international building.
okay, so maybe it's too, I don't want to necessarily spend time researching code right now, but I don't know, because I'm in the business of building retaining walls often on property, and I wonder how retaining walls kind of will come into play in this. Because I know like the incident that kind of came up with the neighbors down the street, that was kind of one of the big disputes was which side of the retaining wall, or at the bottom of the retaining wall or the top of the retaining wall. And if you can build a 5 foot or a 6 foot or a 7 foot retaining wall Well, you have to have a fence on top of that retaining wall just to prevent from falling. So anything above 5 feet, you know, is a major fall hazard. I wouldn't want us to be limited by that, you know, that could kind of come into
Right,
play.
so the ability to seek a variance is always still available. I think it's hard to really account for like every possible retaining wall situation. And so I think if this code wouldn't allow the coverage that someone was seeking, they would just go seek that variance from the Board of Zoning Adjustment. Now, if you're looking for the code to account, I mean, it's just too hard for code to accommodate every possible option.
Gotcha.
But if you feel like this is too restrictive, then we'd love to hear kind of recommendations or
No,
thoughts about
I was just kind of wanting to ask the clarifying question as to what consideration for retaining wall heights might have been baked into this update. Sounds like maybe not much.
Yeah, I mean, without kind of going back to draft language that takes into consideration specific retaining wall heights.
Yeah, I just know that you know, certain retaining walls are allowable with engineering, you know, 5, 6, 7 feet. And at that point we need to have a fence at the top because it's a major hazard to have a, you know, anything above a 4-foot wall really for fall protection. And I just would like to know that we're not making it illegal to create a safe situation or to adhere to a safe kind of OSHA standard building code or you know, like fall protection consideration.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we're not making it illegal, but of course there is that extra step that someone would have to go through if they can't comply with the standards as written in the ordinance.
Okay.
Can I ask, do you typically see like a 4-foot retaining wall in some of these instances in town?
Yeah, people usually try to build the maximum allowable retaining wall without having to go through engineering and special permitting.
Yeah, because that would then only leave them.
4 feet is my understanding, 3 feet in Boulder County.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's all.
Any other clarifying questions for Brett or Miranda? Now we'll go to public comment. Any public comment on the fence code? Amendments?
Can I make a motion?
Well, hearing none, we'll bring it back to the board for final discussion and a motion. 847. It's written incorrectly, just so everyone knows on page 146.
Can I make a motion that we approve ordinance 847, the election code amendments as written?
It's not the election code amendment.
I'm sorry, wrong.
Oh, sorry, it would
wrong
be,
thing.
if you go to,
Well, the fence code amendments, yeah, is contained in 8.1. Yep. Move to approve ordinance 847, amending chapter 16 of the Nederland Municipal Code regarding fences.
Second.
Oh. Do you need the exact language?
And that
I think
there was that error in the
There's
labeling of
that,
it.
so.
Oh, crap.
Let's try it
Yes,
again.
I'll try it again. Let me.
My email,
Okay,
please.
let me try this. I move to approve ordinance 842, amending chapter 16 of the new NMC regarding fences with the amendment that the ordinance number be changed from 842 to 847.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Anything that anyone wants to discuss regarding the retaining walls or anything else? If not, Maisie?
Trustee Severs,
Yes.
Trustee Mountain,
Yes.
Trustee Sterling,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Mahold,
Yes.
Trustee Corvalon,
Yes.
and Mayor Billy.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. The ordinance resolution passes. I can't remember which it's called at the moment, sorry.
Britt, question for you is, do we have stuff in the queue that's going to be affected by what we just passed?
No, we currently don't have anything in the queue.
Okay.
And I will state the variance process is running very smoothly, so I wouldn't have any concerns for anyone that would have to do that.
Cool.
Thank you for all your work on this, Brett.
BZA's got to have something to do.
Yeah, they've been stepping it up since we left it. They're busy folks. So I'm happy. So that brings us to what is scheduled as our second action item, but I'm happy to give the first blurb on this, Miranda, and you can follow up with what I missed. But the election code, as we wrote on page 3 here, the election code amendment action item has been removed from tonight's BOT agenda, and we appreciate. We did put in the public comments, and some of the other documents that went with it, but we removed the aim. The agenda will be reviewed by us, by a BOT at a future meeting as a discussion item initially. Anything else you want to add with that, Miranda?
No, I mean, we just think still, we did receive a public comment related to that item, so we wanted to be mindful of the time that Kathleen Chipai had put into that comment. So that's why you see it in the packet, but yes, we do need a little bit more time to do some additional work on not only the ordinance, but just some, we've thought of some other options of trying to maybe research some historical issues related to election code and would like the time to flesh that out.
And we feel like we have the time, so we decided yesterday to just pull it from the aim, or pull the aim from the agenda. So thanks everyone for your patience and flexibility, and thank you folks in the public for being involved with that as well. So that gets us through tonight's action items. And any other business? Yes, go for it.
Just wanted to see, maybe take a real informal straw poll about the potential popularity of the idea of moving our meetings an hour earlier.
I'd be open to it.
I would be open.
Yeah, I would as well, Jesse. For proposing it.
Tanya?
I mean, I'm not that into it. This time works better for me, but especially if we're gonna have sessions beforehand. It's hard for me to be done working by 5, and it's really hard for me to get done working by 6. I really scramble to get to the meetings that start at 6, like DDA and stuff. But if I'm the only one, I'm the only one. But.
Well, no, I'm not. Yeah, I'm not. I'm 7 o'clock. I mean, a lot of ways works for me. 6 just it cramps.
Really hard.
Life. Pretty hard.
Did you check in? Did you ask Eric about it already? Okay.
So, but I mean, it's probably something worth more discussion. But it's so.
Miranda, I know when DDA meets. What about the other? Who else meets? What time?
ProSab now meets at 5:30, SAB 6:45, Planning Commission is 7, Board of Zoning Adjustment is 7.
Okay.
DDA 6, yeah. They're all over the place. But I did mention, I do believe that the boards, there is a document that states that the board meets the first and third Tuesday at 7 o'clock, so that would need to be amended if there was any sort of official change of time.
That's good to know.
That's your sounding, Jesse.
Yeah, no, it's good. I mean, we should just discuss it more and decide how it's going to work. I mean, Eric does seem to struggle to get to earlier meetings with work. So, I mean, yeah, and they're talking about it. But
Except when he's in Europe, and then he appreciates it.
Except when he's what?
When he's in Europe, he appreciates the earlier meeting.
Yeah, true. Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Macy?
Mayor Billy,
Yes.
Trustee Mountain,
Yes.
Trustee Corvalon,
Yes.
Trustee Sterling,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Mahold,
Yes.
and Trustee Severs.
Yes.
Thank you. The meeting is adjourned at 9:49 p.m.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
All right, good night.
Well done.
Adios all.